Good afternoon, friends. We are blessed to have everyone here this afternoon joining in with this incredible event that so many people have worked together to create for as we share the building our inclusive, beloved community. And I'm Jeff Smith. I'm the pastor here. And I've got with me Dr. Ron Swain, who is at First United Methodist. And so I'm going to give you just a little bit of a welcome, and Ron's going to share some things. Then we're just kind of back and forth, just sort of introduce this. We do have a group that is with us on Facebook, so Facebook Live. So we welcome those who are in the virtual space with us as well. And when it does come to time of questions, I'll be, along with others, will be kind of monitoring our Facebook feed to make sure that any questions that are asked there, so for you on Facebook, that we will be sure and try and answer questions that you have. So I want to share briefly just a word about facilities here. We have, first of all, we have restrooms that are to your right out these doors, and you'll see them just down the hall. We have refreshments that if you haven't already found them on your way in, they're there on your way out, okay? So they're there. We call this area Munch and Mingle for a reason. So that's what that's called out there. One thing I've been asked to share also is that we have children's books, and that was actually part of our Prayer and Action Challenge that we will, I'll share a little bit more about with you about in just a moment. But if you have children that you want to pick up a really good children's book for them on racism, on inclusion, on how to create an anti-racist world, we have some really good ones out there. I've been told that some of the adults would do well to read those too. So, Ron, tell us. You take it from here, and then I'll come back in a sec.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this event that has been planned over several weeks by some outstanding people, and we'll say more about them in a little bit. On August the 9th of 2014, police officer Darren Wilson fatally shot Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Within a few months of that incident, we convened about 20 community leaders here in Georgetown to consider how we might prevent such an event occurring here in our city. After a few weeks, the group agreed that engaging in respectful, civil conversations about the difficult issue of race was the way we should proceed. And thus, Courageous Conversations About Race in Georgetown was birthed. Over the past 8 years, members of Courageous Conversations have participated in training for conversations based on the Red Bench model used by Interfaith Action of Central Texas. Members have launched community-wide conversations and book studies at churches, at the Georgetown Public Library, in Sun City, and other places throughout our community. We have participated in workshops, especially One Human Race. We have collaborated with the Georgetown Police Department on its community initiative. We have interacted with the Georgetown Independent School District. We are involved with the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. And we also interact with other city leaders. We've created learning action groups that focus on specific issues in our community, such as economic development, public education, health care, and public safety. Members also addressed issues such as the statue on the courthouse square, transportation, and affordable housing. Out of these learning action groups have emerged two 501c3 organizations and a voter education and advocacy group. The voices of individuals and groups that have heretofore been left out of the community decision-making process are now being heard. Together, we are working to create and nurture what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. described as the beloved community. Many of us involved in courageous conversations believe that racism is a sin. We believe that the struggle to eradicate racism is a spiritual undertaking. Racism divides God's beloved children into groups that foment hostility, ill will, fear, hatred, and violence. We believe that as God's beloved children, we are called to be bridge builders, reconcilers, and healers. We are called to abhor the evil attitudes and behaviors of our fellow human beings, while at the same time extending forgiveness and expressing our deep love for all. And all means all. Each of us comes from different backgrounds and different experiences, yet we are called, as the prophet Micah says, to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. There are those among us who believe the words of 2 Chronicles 7:14, which states, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land." So today, almost the anniversary of Michael Brown's death, we're gathered to pray, but not only pray, but to take action to build our inclusive, beloved community. Thank you for being with us. I was asked to recognize any dignitaries or local officials among us, and so I'm going to recognize each and every one of you. I know we have some representatives from our school board present, and we also have some pastors and other clergy present, but all of you are beloved children of God. Welcome.
Everybody is a dignitary.
Yeah.
One of the things that as we prepare for this event, wanted to share kind of how this began from the Wellspring perspective, and then Ron's going to share us a little bit about Micah workers and what their work has been. But at Wellspring, it was late in the spring that we undertook a task that we realized would set us up for about 5 weeks in the summer to respond to a challenge that came through the United Methodist General Commission on Religion and Race. And it was a challenge to be involved in what was called a daily prayer, a racial justice prayer and action challenge. It involved daily prayer, and so we had members of our prayer team who really undergirded this effort and who took this on as a big part of their calling within our church. And so they had written daily prayers that appeared on our Facebook page every day Then each week, we had one of those persons who offered prayer in our worship experience for each of those 5 Sundays. Every Friday, we put out an action challenge, something that was, we were inviting people into to being part of creating an anti-racist culture and world toward building an inclusive, beloved community. And in that process, we had many people who became engaged in active conversations about race. And we had opportunities to, one of the action challenges was to share with children in our lives the stories of race and racism and our values around that. And one of the things that we were invited, and we were challenged to support minority-owned businesses in our community. We were challenged then to provide books that would be for the church, for us to use. So that's the books that we're talking about out here. So our church rose to this occasion, and in the process, we knew that when it came to putting together an event, we needed to connect with Ron, with Courageous Conversations, and then we found with the Micah workers. So, Ron, tell us about that.
Thank you, Jeff. I guess I need to turn my mic
Yeah.
on. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to apologize to the Micah workers if I get any of my information incorrect. And I know Dr. Paula Donning is sitting up here, and she's going to be glaring at me if I don't get it right. But the Micah Workers for Racial Justice at First United Methodist Church really emerged out of a book study done at the church. I believe it was in 2019, when we read and discerned the work of Latasha Morrison, a book entitled Be the Bridge. A group of the participants in that study decided that they wanted to extend their knowledge beyond just that time together, but they wanted to share it with other members of our congregation. And so they developed an 8-week series which they called Holy Conversations About Race. And they went through a methodical process of developing the content and then doing a beta test with a group of church members to get feedback on that particular, the content, the format, etc. Earlier this year, the Holy Conversations About Race was launched with, I believe, about 20 adult Sunday school leaders and others participating. And so the Micah Workers for Racial Justice continue to refine and to improve the content as well as their list of resources. They are extending now their ministry beyond First Methodist Church and joining with Wellspring and creating this opportunity. So today, part of our vision of extending beyond First Methodist Church is being realized. And to that I say, to God be the glory. And I'd like to recognize the members of the Micah Workers Group. If you would stand where you are, some of them are seated in the back, please. Let's acknowledge them. Thank you. Thank you.
So what we'll do is, as we launch into this panel discussion and time of prayer, I'm going to start us with a prayer, and then I'll let Dr. Swain take the helm of moderating and introducing the panel and leading us through this discussion. So let's pray. God, we offer ourselves to you as imperfect vessels, but vessels nonetheless. And we know that when we give ourselves to you, broken as we are, that you have this capacity to be able to use us, first to wake up and see where we are broken, to see where we can make significant change, to offer us grace that becomes more than just healing on a personal level, but becomes healing on a corporate and global level. So thank you for blessing us with your presence and your grace. Be with us now as we share in this time, seeking to build a beloved community, a community that is indeed blessed and whole through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. I'm going to sit down and let you do it.
Okay. On your program, on the back is a list of the organizations, 5 of them that are represented, and then an opportunity for you to add your name and contact information if you'd like to receive more information from any one of these panelists. We also are joined by a 6th panelist this afternoon, and you'll learn more about the Hispanic Business Circle. Rose Mendoza will be talking about the business circle. And so what I'd like to do is just simply say who these panelists are, and then they will have the opportunity to say more about themselves if they choose, and then to talk about the work that they're doing here in Georgetown. So first is Catherine Kobosky. Catherine is the chair of the board of Prosper Georgetown. Prosper Georgetown emerged as one of the 501c3 organizations that emerged from Courageous Conversations, Economic Development Learning Action Group. And you know some of the members of that group, particularly a member of this congregation, the Reverend Milton Jordan, who chaired the board prior to Catherine assuming that responsibility. Also with us is Richard Glasgow, who is chair of the Georgetown Housing Initiative. And Richard has an extensive career in housing as a volunteer here in Georgetown through the Housing Authority, Georgetown Housing Authority, and also serving on the city's Housing Advisory Board, and now leading this initiative for workforce affordable housing. We're also being joined by Chuck Collins, who is currently the chair of GTX Connects, and Chuck will tell you more about his organization and its origins. Joining us is Charlotte Paramore from RISE, Realizing Improvement in Scholastic Excellence or Education, working with our public schools here in Georgetown. Dr. Paramore will, I'm sure, certainly share some insights from that work. Perhaps the next person, if you don't know him, you may be in big trouble. You know we have a new police chief, and his name is Corey Cheetah, and he's joining us today. Why don't we acknowledge we're acknowledging Corey for his new appointment. Okay, great. And also joining us is Rose Mendoza from the Hispanic Business Circle, and she will talk more about the business circle. I've been given the challenge of keeping these folks on time. They know that they have no more than 10 minutes each, and then we'll have at the end an opportunity for question and answers. So if you have questions, be sure to write those down, and we'll take those after everyone is finished. Thank you. Catherine?
As Ron said, I'm Catherine. Am I on? Okay, Catherine Kirkabotsky, and I'm with Prosper Georgetown. And our organization seeks to address economic injustice. It's hard for people to move ahead to get a leg up if they can't afford the basic necessities. We are working together to educate the community. Thank y'all for being here, and thank you, Ron and Jeff, for hosting this event. We also are working to educate businesses and workers and consumers about the importance of businesses, employers paying a living wage. How many of you know what the current minimum wage is? $7.25 an hour. It hasn't been increased since 2009. Think about how much our own costs have gone up. That's an impossible wage to live on. We believe that a person who works 40 hours a week should be able to live in dignity and pay for all the basic necessities, food, clothing, shelter, medical care, transportation, and utilities, without having to rely on charity, such as the Caring Place, to help with rental assistance and utility assistance, or government services. We have determined that the living wage in Georgetown is $18.75 an hour. And we base that on the lowest possible rental, one bedroom or studio apartment rental cost of $1,100 a month, excuse me. Even if a person makes $18.75 an hour, that doesn't include the taxes that have to come out of it first. So that leaves you very little money to work with. And if you think about your own utility bills, your car rent, car insurance, car payment, food costs, which have gone up, as we all know, it's really hard to make ends meet. And so one of the ways that we are encouraging the businesses, employers to pay a living wage is we're following a model that other organizations, similar organizations in the Living Wage Network have developed. And what they do and what we are working on is certification of employers who pay a living wage. Certification means they go through an application process and they pledge that every worker in their business is making the minimum $18.75 an hour. If they aren't yet there, and we know that can be a stretch for business owners, then we have a category called aspiring, in which they promise to try to go up to the living wage in 2 or 3 years. And once we get employers certified, we will give them a fancy window decal to put on their businesses, on the doors of their businesses, so consumers will know this is a living wage employer and we should support them. I hope that y'all will consider reaching out to people you know, businesses you know, and ask them to join with us. About 4 years ago, it was pre-pandemic, we had a community forum in which we invited several major employers to come meet with us and talk to us about a living wage. Naturally, they were concerned about how paying a living wage would impact their bottom line. And that's a legitimate concern. Everybody agreed that we need to pay a living wage. 40 hours a week, you ought to be able to live on that and not have to look for a second or a third job. Because when you have to make those decisions to look for additional work, that means less time with your family. And that means less time to rest and enjoy life. So most of the employers that we talked to were supportive of the idea, but they said they needed time to think about it. Then came the pandemic, and we all know how that worked out for everybody. So we're back working and meeting with employers and hoping that we can kick this off and get our certified employers recognized. We will acknowledge them on our website and in our communications, as well as the window decals. And when that starts, I hope you make a concerted effort to join with us in supporting those employers who are paying a living wage. One of the key factors, as I mentioned, in determining a living wage is housing cost. And so Richard and I connect quite frequently and talk about the need. But housing cost isn't the only concern. You still have to have money to pay for those other necessities. So again, I hope you will join with us, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I'll pass it on to Richard.
As usual, Ron, you're still gonna have to cut me off, brother. You know, I got about an hour worth of stuff here. So anyway, my name is Richard Glasgow. I've been here since 1999. Came here to retire in a little bitty place that wasn't going to have very many people. So much for that. But anyway, I'm the chair of the Georgetown Housing Initiative. And this is, actually, we're 4 years old as of last month. And it actually was started by a group of people that thought that there were things that were bigger than themselves. The fact that, you know, we had so many people that were cost burden, and the official definition of that is that if you're paying more than 30% of your income toward housing, then you're considered cost burden. That's an important figure to kind of understand. And so, you know, with that whole deal, that we realized that really there wasn't anybody actually speaking for that group of professionals, working class people. And so with a group of our buddies, you know, we just kind of decided that, you know, we were through talking about it and that we wanted to do something about it. And doing something about it after going through a number of different channels seemed to be the best thing was to have a independent nonprofit that would focus in on that. So our mission is to equip, to educate, and empower people around workforce issues, particularly individuals and organizations. And so that's what gives us our marching orders every day. One of the things that is real, I guess I could say, another driving force is the 2017 economic development study that the city of Georgetown did. And without going into all hundreds of those pages, it did list in there a potential threat. And this is back in 2017, so this is way before the pandemic and all of that stuff. That one of the threats was the lack of affordable housing. And just as important was that during that study, they surveyed some of the citizens of Georgetown and found out that not only did they want affordable housing, but they wanted some more types of affordable housing. So to me, that seems to be pretty clear when the people say that they want something, that hopefully, you know, we'll be marching toward doing something about that. Unfortunately, if we were all doing things that we're supposed to do, I probably wouldn't be here, and I'd be out celebrating some affordable housing this afternoon. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So in 2019, there was a study, and actually, I think I was still on HAB at that time. 51% of the people in Georgetown in 2019 were cost burden. Remember the 30% that I told you about? Well, 51%, according to the states, I mean, not the states, according to the city's calculations, were cost burden. That figure, understandably, is more now. if you've kind of kept up with current events. So what has happened is that employers have seen the fact that the employees that were living outside of Georgetown, outside of the county, what you're seeing with all of these hiring signs is that that spigot is dried up, or is drying up, and it's purely economic. If I'm living in Killeen, you know, that drive at $2 a gallon is very different from that drive at $4 a gallon. It's simple economics, addition, multiplication, however you want to put it. So, and not only that, but actually I talked to an employer not too long ago, and they were telling me that they have about 20% turnover, and it's not because people don't want to work. Don't eat that apple that people are throwing out there. It's, well, you know, people don't want to work. They want to work. They can't make work work, and that's the problem. You know, that they're eager to work. They come, they put in the application, and they come for a week or two, and they realize that, man, I'm running my own personal nonprofit here. You know, which is okay if you sign up for it and you get a 501c3, et cetera. So, and as I told someone the other day, in a former life, I was an insurance agent with State Farm for about 31 years. And I understand that, you know, you could have a good month, you can have a good week, and that sales are going great. But one thing that you never do in business is assuming that your competition is doing nothing, that they're going to continue to let you beat them on sales or whatever it is. And I see the same thing here. If you look at Gerald, Florence, Killeen, Temple, they all have economic development corporations. They don't have them just because I'm okay. Okay. You have to get my attention. I get going, man. They don't have economic development corporations just for the fun of it or just because everybody else has one. They're assuming to do something with those, and if that's where we're drawing our employees from as employers, then those guys are not sitting still. You know, it's just understandable. You know, it's kind of basics. So, so the more people that we can equip, empower, and educate, you know, that's our advocacy. We'll talk to anybody, anytime, any place, in order to get that point across. So that's the economic end of it. That it's actually good for business, it's good for employers, it's good for employees. Now, I would be certainly remiss if I didn't give you guys a moral angle on this. The moral angle is that it's the right thing to do, but it is going to take it's going to take the C word, and the C word is courage. That sometimes our friends or maybe our mates at the country club and stuff like that don't see things like we see them. And that's kind of a sad thing. But I tell you what, I brought this, and I really don't have a royalty on this book or anything like this, but I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Russell Moore. And Russell Moore used to be president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He quit a number of years ago. He resigned, as a matter of fact, around this whole issue of courage. And Russell certainly can talk about courage. But when I saw the book, the back of it, and I'll read that to you if I got enough time. All right, I can do that. I can do it in 3 minutes. Oh, 50 seconds, Chuck says. Okay. But this is what really got me to pick it up. And I knew a little bit about him and why he quit. And if you guys are up on current events, you know what's going on with the Southern Baptist Convention, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not here to lay him out or anything like that. But I do think that Russell Moore is a significant human being in our time. But anyway, the back says, we live in a fearful and cowardly time. Some are anxious and withdrawn, seeking to escape the notice of whatever scares them. Others mask their fear with fighting and quarrelsomeness. The root of all this is the fear we might lose our belonging in whatever tribe in which we seek safety. The fear we might have to stand alone. The crisis we face is not a crisis of clarity, but a crisis of courage. Our problem is not so much a lack of knowledge as a lack of nerve. And yet Jesus told us that we are to stand with courage. That doesn't mean we will be fearless, but we will know how to face our fear and keep walking toward the voice that calls us homeward. Gospel courage is nothing like the bravado of this anxious age. The call to courage is terrifying because the call to courage is a call to be crushed. On the other side of fear is freedom, the freedom to stand. So I spent, I don't know how much, and I bought this book for about 4 or 5 other people because I just thought that was great. And reading it has certainly kind of helped me solidify my focus.
Thank you, Richard.
Come on. Okay. Hi, I'm Chuck Collins. I'm the executive director for GTX Connect. Ron, there is no S on the end of that, so just so people know when they go and look for it. So we're a incubator organization. We people from the community come to us and ask for our help in getting programs or projects started or funded or moved along. And so that's what we do. We've got 5 or so in-house programs that we run or help people run. We have the Immigration Services, which focuses on family immigration. So a lot of time undocumented folks are married to folks who are citizens. And that causes a lot of issues within the family as far as security and that sort of thing. And so this group works on changing the status or getting a good status for individuals within this family. So for example, because it has a lot of carry-on effects. It's not just about the legal right to stay here. Does anybody remember the stimulus checks? Okay, how many of us got them? All right. So it turns out if you're married to an undocumented person, they don't have a Social Security card, but they're still required to file taxes, and so they do. But a family, so say the mom is legal here in the country and the father is not, they did not receive a stimulus check because both parties didn't have a Social Security number. So it's things like that people don't really think about that really affect a family's right, a family being here. For a while their kids were afraid to, the parents were afraid to go to grocery stores, and so they would send their 10-year-olds in HEB to get up the groceries and bring them back. So things like that. So this program helps people get their status straight. It's low cost or free, depending on the family situation. They've just got their certification from the Department of Justice to do this work. So they're above board, and they're that's the other part of the problem, is that there's a lot of folks out here that will take advantage of immigrants and charge up to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for to work on their statuses, and they still won't get a good result from that. I think the most we charge is $20. Right? So the other programs we have a STEM program that's getting started at the Boys and Girls Club. We plan to take that STEM education and take it to where the kids are. So I think GISD has a great program. One of the problems is transportation. Right? And so instead of trying to get the kids there at a certain time and then picked up and brought home, we want to go out to the places where the kids are instead, and then have those in. So we have a prototype going on at the Boys and Girls Club. Should start this semester. We have a group called Relief Georgetown, and their whole gig is planting trees, beautifying Georgetown, community gardens, native plants, the education and the actual doing of that work. And they've got a Greater Green project that they're working on right now, where they're going to try and bring art and native plants into public sector in places where, quite frankly, the city of Georgetown isn't putting them. So we have a lot of good stuff downtown. I'm not trying to degrade any of that work, but there's other places in town, and some places where, honestly, working class people don't really get to downtown all that much. So they want to get it to where people are. Again, just like the STEM education. There's a program called Youth Sports Outreach, and I don't know if does anybody here did their kids ever play elite sports here in Texas? So you understand how expensive that can be. So if you're, so imagine if you're a working class or a poor family, and your child wants to participate, they probably can't. And if they're really, really good, at basketball, they'll get a scholarship. However, scholarship to play for one of these elite teams. The problem is usually those parents are also expected to pay for the free scholarship that they have by working the concession stands or doing other things, and they just don't have. They really don't have the wherewithal to do that because they're working class. They're probably working 2, 3 jobs. So they don't have the time to do that, and so basically the kids just don't participate. So this program is to help kids participate in those programs, and they're running a teams right now, just girls basketball as a prototype to do that sort of thing. And then last but not least, we have a Why Can't We Be Friends program, which most directly talks on the subject that we're talking about now. And we've had, the way it got started, well, let me back up. What it is an online webinar where we interview regular folks from different communities, especially communities that have been kind of left on the wayside. And we interview the members of that. And you may or may not agree with the lifestyles, you may not agree with anything, but it gives you an opportunity to actually talk to people and hear their actual experience living life, LGBTQ, living life. I think we did Ask a Black Dude was the very first one we did. That was very interesting, actually. And so what we do is we have the audience participate online, and they ask questions live, and those questions get filtered through a host, and to keep things safe. And so the questions are asked, and the audience gets to learn about them, and they're online, and you can come and talk to me. I'll give you the address, the URL for that. All of these things together seem very disparate and different from each other, but it's strange when you ask the community to come out to you and give you their ideas, and you start working on them. What you find, or what I find, is that they all deal with equity, right? So I know intersectionality is a big word right now, but really all that means is that no one has just one problem, and we all have similar problems, right? And so these programs together kind of look at the equity that we have in our community, and instead of complaining about it and yelling to the powers that be, which we do, but we also say, let's take it in our own hands and build up something for ourselves as a community. All right, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Paramore, and I'm co-chair of RISE, which is an offshoot of Courageous Conversation, and we are concerned with racial justice in the educational system. During our monthly meetings of Courageous Conversation, our facilitator often centers us with a traditional greeting from the African village of Maasai, Kasarian Ingara, which means, "And how are the children?" As the story goes, Maasai warriors always respond to each other by saying, "All the children are well," which is a metaphor for life is good when every adult shares responsibility for the care and protection of all the children in the community. But before we can respond to each other and say all the children are well, what actions must be taken in our schools and in our community to ensure that children are thriving? Back in, say, 2019, a group of concerned citizens in Courageous Conversations recognized a need to take action to improve the academic performance of GISD and to achieve equity, excellence, and racial justice for all the children in Georgetown. This group had been observing a 6-year history of declining performance that resulted by 2019 in 6 out of 15 schools earning D or F ratings. That was compounded by the fact that the district there seemed to be a pervading lack of urgency to show improvement and to intervene into that decline. And so the group determined, well, I would say right now that currently our preview of 2022 data indicates that there has been some improvement, but that we currently continue to perform below the state, and that we currently have wide gaps in performance of various student populations. So we're seeing some children failing, and when we average our data together, it doesn't appear as serious as it is. So we have to look carefully at individual campuses and individual student groups. So our group determined back in around 2020 that the shortest path to influence district change was a grassroots effort to identify and support candidates for election to the school board who will maintain a district focus on academic achievement and the well-being of all children, and a vision of excellence for Georgetown to return it to where it had previously performed in years past. So to that end, a committee was formed in 2020. We call ourselves RISE, Realize Improvement in Scholastic Excellence. So that is our vision, to ensure that all students in GISD perform at high levels. Our mission is to identify and promote the election of candidates who want to improve academic performance and to support the goals of RISE. Just briefly, our goals include prioritizing early literacy so that by 3rd grade our kids are literate in numeracy and literacy and on grade level. Holding the district and campuses accountable for performance. Recreating GISD as a district of equity and excellence with no D or F schools. Fairly compensating our teachers so that we offer salaries that are competitive with surrounding school districts. We're seeing our teachers leave to go to other districts that pay higher salaries. And then redirecting district resources on programs that support wellness and academic excellence, and that we direct those funds to the campuses and students who need it most. So back in 2020, RISE developed strategies for identifying candidates that are aligned with those goals and providing support for these candidates to promote their election. Within 2 years, we had elected 3 board members who represented candidates of high excellence and that aligned with our goals. However, in the 2022 election this last spring, we had identified 3 candidates for election, and none of our candidates were elected. So we did not achieve the results that we desired. In evaluating the outcome of the election, we concluded that the political landscape has changed, and that and what proved to be effective strategies a year ago are not sufficient today. We recognize that there is a political divide in our country and our state that has impacted the character of traditionally nonpartisan school board races. Statewide, there seems to be a groundswell of well-organized political action committees that are trying to influence the outcome of local school board elections. So this intense partisan focus has led to some harsh political rhetoric and animosity not typically seen in small-town elections. We believe that partisan politics in our community may distract voters and board members from the real and important issues that threaten the well-being of all of our children. So RISE is currently engaged in planning better ways to recruit and support board candidates who align with our goals and develop positive strategies to sustain a bipartisan approach to district governance. Our current plan is to strengthen the organizational structure of RISE and recruit more volunteers to assist us in building an inclusive, beloved community. Develop a year-long plan to investigate and develop solutions about important issues surrounding voter education, voter suppression, and voter registration. Maintain a strong presence at board meetings to deliver concerns and make recommendations about the needs of students and teachers. To use social media and public meetings to improve communication and outreach to all portions of our school community in order to build trust, transparency, and strengthen community engagement. To seek and promote partnerships with other organizations in order to leverage community engagement in supporting the well-being of our students and teachers. To research and promote the potential for moving to single-member districts, to seek greater equity and representation in our community. To stimulate voter turnout, especially among parents, in order to elect the most effective leadership to meet the different portions of our community. This fall, RISE will collaborate with a class of political science students and their professor at Southwestern University to identify and research a relevant topic in political opinion that will enable us to gain some insight into how to stimulate nonpartisan voter interest and participation in GISD school board elections. There are numerous volunteer opportunities with RISE, and we need you. They may include leadership opportunities, recruiting to help us find volunteers, block walking, letter writing, posting social media to educate the public about issues confronting our district, fundraising, poll watching, hosting and attending meet and greets, attending community forums, and school board meetings, addressing the board with our concerns, and promoting voter registration and voter turnout. If you're interested in becoming a member of RISE and need to work, you need something to do, we have plenty of opportunities for you. Thank you.
Okay, so as Ron said, I am Corey Cheetah, and I truly am humbly and honorably privileged to serve as your police chief. So coming to speak to people, I absolutely love. Meeting new people, I absolutely love. Having tough conversations and getting tough questions, I don't mind. Being told I have 7 to 10 minutes is terrifying. Thanks, Ron. Much like the other panelists, I will do my best. I want to share with you a quick story which I shared with Ron earlier, and hopefully at the end you'll understand why I'm telling it to you. I was in Target the other day with my youngest daughter, and a woman comes up to me and she says, "Sir, I'm really sorry. I don't want to bother you." She goes, "But I kind of think you're our new police chief." And she goes, I saw you on the news, and are you our new police chief? I said, "Yes, ma'am. I am your new police chief." And she goes, "Well, I just want to welcome you to Georgetown." And so my daughter's looking at me like, "Are you going to say anything?" And I'm like, "No, this is not the time." So I just said, "Thank you, ma'am. I think I'm really going to enjoy it here." I've been enjoying it here since 1997, but so the whole point of that is like I am your new police chief, but I am not new. You know, for 26 years, I've lived in this community. I've raised my kids in this community, and I tell people unashamedly, I've loved Georgetown since the second I met her. It was someplace I didn't intend on staying, and the longer I stayed, the more I loved it. So I am deeply invested in the community. I kind of want to go off script. What I was going to talk to you about, I've changed my mind, and is not at all what I'm going to talk to you about. I really want to talk to you about something a little different, but I think it, in the context of what we're talking about, will make more sense. When we're having panel discussions about racial justice, I mean, the reality is I am not immune to the understanding that law enforcement and the relationship with law enforcement and the public we serve has been at the forefront of that for a really long time. And I have been blessed with very strong mentors in this profession, and I will tell you that one of the things that's really important for me as a chief is how we work towards building a beloved community is we fundamentally have to change and redefine the way that we as law enforcement and one another engage with one another. And I think what it really comes down to is, for me, I don't want to talk to you about programs. I'd rather talk to you about philosophy. And the philosophy is currently, I think, in society, and some of the other panelists have touched on this, is there is an unwillingness or an inability to see each other's basic humanity. And that really is a two-way street. One of the things that we do, and Wayne did it too, is one of the questions, like before we hire anybody, there's a chief's interview. And one of the very first questions we ask them is we say, "Why do you want to be a police officer?" Which sounds like a very basic standard question. At the end of the day, it is. But so if I were to ask you that, why do you want to be a police officer? What do you think everybody's answer is? What do they all say? They want to help people, right? Like, so that, I mean, is there anything wrong with that answer? No, but I do not ever, nor did Wayne, ever let them live with that answer. Because we respond to them, okay, that's great. Like, I appreciate that you want to help people, because quite frankly, if you said anything but, you're pretty much a psychopath and we can't hire you, right? So you want to help people. Like, I will tell you that teachers in our schools help people every single day. They help them learn. Nurses and doctors in our hospitals help people every single day by helping them get better. The barista at Starbucks help you get the much needed caffeine you need every morning for a reasonable $7. They're helping people. My question to you is, why do you want to do this job to help people? And that's a really important question, because any of you familiar with Simon Sinek, it starts to get to their why. And their why for me is really important, because the why is the power in the story of why they're doing this job. And we have some officers whose parents were both drug addicts, and they never want to see kids have to grow up in a house like that. We've had officers that have been victims of childhood sexual abuse, and they never want another child to have to go through that. Or if they do, they want that child to know someone is on their side. So really powerful stuff. But one of the things we're doing is we have incorporated what's called Arbinger training. And it seems really simple to tell people, hey, you have to see people as people. But every day, we all miss opportunities to do that. And it also sounds really simple. It's like you talk about, well, we're going to teach you how to treat people. Oh, so you mean the golden rule, right? Like treat others as we'd want to be treated. Well, yeah, that's kind of it in a way, but there's also these moments, and I really, it's probably relevant to share with you an example, right? And this is where we in my profession, like sometimes, don't get me wrong, we are God's imperfect children and we fall short in fabulous ways sometimes. Like I understand that. But every day we also fall short in how we engage with other people, and it's unintentional. When you think about someone who has recently been the victim of what we will call a no crime is minor, right? But say you've had your car broken into, and one of our officers comes over there to take that report from you. Well, when that officer goes over there, they say they've been on the job for a while. They've been on the job for 5 years. They're coming there. They're being polite. They're telling you, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. They are, hey, I'm sorry this happened to you. But at the same time, they also know what information they need, right? So because they've taken a bunch of these, they're getting your name, your address, where your car was parked, when you last saw it not broken into, when did you discover it was broken into, what was taken. And then meanwhile, they got the earpiece in their ear, and all they're hearing is these other calls stacking up, knowing other people need service. All of this becomes very transactional for us, right? Like it's essentially a business transaction. And that's where we don't do a bad job, but when we leave, you just don't feel good, right? Like you just don't feel like we cared. And probably one of the best things that God's ever done to me is allow my car to get broken into. And this, by the way, it was the city of Round Rock. I keep reminding Chief Banks of that all the time. And when I was standing there waiting for Round Rock PD to get there, I was actually kind of shocked by how victimized that I felt. And I knew that was God telling me something, right? Because that was God giving me an opportunity to reconnect, even though I've always felt pretty empathetic, to reconnect with my empathy. So what I tell these officers is when you are going to these calls, what you need to remember is that, yes, this may be your 500th burglary report, but it might very well be their first, and you have to treat them like it's their first. How we treat people matters. We know that it's not the things that are said in the media that really determine how people feel about law enforcement. It's either our most recent contact or it's either someone's most recent contact or someone they know and trust's most recent contact with law enforcement that determines how they actually feel about us. So we are the ones out there every single day rewriting our own narratives about how the communities we serve feel about us. Everything you do when you go out there matters. And when you see the basic humanity of someone, when you don't see them as an obstacle, when you don't see them as a vessel, when you don't see them as anything other than human, it's really hard to do violence against people that you see the humanity in. We've discovered that in war for a really long time. It's hard to hurt somebody that you know is a human being. And the same way to treat them poorly, right? So for me, I am really concerned about getting to their minds and affecting their mindset. Like I can write policies all day long that affect behavior. But if I can touch their mind, I know I'm a lot closer to their hearts as well. And we are trying to do the right things to make sure that they never forget that. And that's a two-way street too, right? Like it's really hard to, like for me it's really important. I know I'm the chief, but I would much prefer that people call me Corey, right? Because I am no better, no worse, no less perfect, no more perfect than anybody in this room. Like I live in this community, I shop here, my kids still terrorize this community, all three of them. I have this vested interest in the community, and I am you. Sir Robert Peel, 1829, founder of modern policing. If we would just do everything the man said, like we wouldn't have 90% of the problems we have, right? Because he talks about how the police are the public and the public are the police. The only reason we are allowed to do, and I tell officers this all the time, the only reason we are allowed to do what we do is because you allow us to do it. I said, the second the majority of society decides that's no longer true, that's when law enforcement will start to really have problems. I was also privileged last week at the Temple Police Academy graduation to speak, and I had come across this phrase a long time ago, and I tell the officers this all the time too. And I shared it during my speech at GMA, right? Because I think it's just that powerful. And it's a quote from a blogger in Ghana whose name is Nesta Erskine. And I tell everybody, you don't necessarily think you'd look for inspiration from a blogger from Ghana, but until you hear what he had to say. And what he says is, we might not be the ones to change the world. We might not belong to the few that put a ding in the universe. We might not be something the whole world would celebrate. But in the little corners that we live, in the lives that we've played a part in, we should be nothing but unforgettable. And that's what I tell these officers every single day. You have opportunities every single day to go out here and be unforgettable in somebody's life. I said, that's what I need you to do. That's what you swore to do, and that's what they expect from you. Go and take these opportunities and be unforgettable. Thank you.
Okay, so on a lighter note, who's ready for a fiesta? So thank you, Corey. That was very inspirational. I really appreciated that talk. So my name is Rose Mendoza. I am a member of the Hispanic Business Circle, and we're part of the Chamber. And I am part of a group that was started by the owners of the Arthur Murray Dance Studio right here on William, Carlos and Elena. And what they did is they worked with Chuck, right, as with GTX Connect as our fiscal sponsor to bring back Fiesta. Does anybody remember Fiesta a long time ago? Right, so Fiesta in Georgetown has a fascinating history. I know the highlights of it, and I wanted to share it with you because I just felt it was so important. So I want to say, 25, 30 years ago, there was a Mexican community in Georgetown, and they took it upon themselves to organize Fiesta as a fundraiser to improve their community and have scholarships for their kids to go to college. So these were active members of the community who put on this big fiesta, and a big part of it was to celebrate the culture and the heritage. So each generation that, was here, what was their Mexican culture like, because they actually don't go to Mexico and celebrate it anymore. It's up to their parents to do it. So they were very, very successful. In fact, I'm fairly new to Georgetown, and we went to the Rio Bravo Cafe at the Georgetown Square. And the owner was telling me stories about the fiesta where she was part of this community. And when she told me the story, it just went, this is real, how it really, changed her life, her family's life, and things like that. So my big story is to tell you about, we're going to be doing a fiesta. We're bringing it back. It's on October 1st. It's going to be behind the library. It's going to, be start out very small, but we really hope that we can bring back the original intent of what Fiesta was, to raise money, to build community. There's a basic philosophy that within the Mexican culture that we believe in, and it's called La Cultura Cura. It translates roughly to our culture heals our soul and our spirit. So the better we understand our culture, our heritage, what it brings, it builds our own self-esteem. So that's like the basic philosophy that we like to bring back, and to have not just the Mexican culture, but the culture being able to be celebrated, and very much how Georgetown, does an amazing job celebrating the arts, in here in Georgetown. So that is my basic I wanted to share with you. You're about to hear more about it. It's going to be on October 1st from 12 to 4. But anyway, wanted to thank Chuck as our fiscal sponsor and also our advisor, and the Chamber has also been amazing supporting as well.
Okay, so what questions do you have? What questions do you have? You've heard from our panelists, and they provided some useful information, probably some things that you didn't know about Georgetown. I mean, I see people shaking their heads. They didn't know about all this going on in our city. Dr. Benson has his hand raised. Identify yourself, sir.
Dr. Allen Benson. I'm at the St. Paul Church where life begins to get better.
Okay.
I was actually excited to hear from Brother Police Chief there, because I know how important it is that the law enforcement community and the community at large have relationship. I'm also aware that there are some truly awesome officers, as you seem to be, but there are also some knuckleheads that have been born and raised in environments where bigotry, prejudice are parts of their nature because they've been taught that way. I'm also aware that as an administrator, you can't always do everything you want to do. And because it's a government agency, there are certain steps you have to go through in order to get rid of the knuckleheads. So my question sincerely is, do you have in place a method or means to identify those people who are historically hateful, inconsiderate, and uncaring, where you can begin to help the community to see that there is a price to pay for doing things that are out of order? Do you have that in place?
Yes, absolutely. So, we are what is called a Texas Police Chief's Best Recognized Agency, which means there's a series of policies, procedures, and things that we follow, and one of those that's mandatory is what they call an early warning system, right? So if there is really anybody that starts to display any type of pattern of behavior, like when it comes to complaints, right? Like any citizen complaint, no matter what the outcome of it, every single complaint is documented, right? So it would be those complaints and other things, whether it be driving behavior, use of force incidents, all these things would generate, even now with 100 officers, if you don't have something like that, you could lose track of that, right? But this allows us to have those triggers in place. But like I said, I will tell you, even since Chief Nero got there has, in his first 2 years, like almost 20 people left the department, and that was part of that, right? So now there's like I said, we spend, and we're not perfect, right? Like anybody we still have to discipline people from time to time, but it's not for stuff like that. But we do try to do the best we can to make sure we're hiring the right people in the first place, because rather than create accountable people, you make sure you hire accountable people in the first place.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Got a living wage.
Bruce, would you introduce yourself?
Thanks for the reminder.
Thank you.
Bruce Schroet, First United Methodist Church. I've got a living wage question, Catherine. When we talk about living wage, I grew up in this paradigm that wait staff don't have to be paid very much because they collect tips. And so I'm wondering how we learn how to cross that hump. I can understand, other hourly workers getting, you're working for a small business or a small industry, but we seem to continue to build loopholes for our wait staff that maybe isn't quite fair, because oftentimes they're struggling even more than the other workers are.
Yes, thank you. Wait staff often make, I think it's $1.30 an hour plus tips, and the employer is expected to make up the difference between the $1.30 and $7.25. Oftentimes, those employees have to share their tip money with back of the house. That means the cooks, the dishwasher, and what have you. So the take-home pay is much lower. I agree. I think we should address, certainly increase the bottom, the starting point for tipped workers. I think we also should have some sort of rules in place that require people to pay back of house, the folks who aren't getting the tips, so that they can make a living wage. There are some businesses, not here in Georgetown, that have gone to no tip. They pay their workers a living wage. And so if you frequent someplace that has tipped employees, I would ask them what they make, what their starting pay is, and encourage the owners, the managers, to reconsider how they compensate their employees. Because it's got to be really tough to work as a tipped employee when you can have feast and famine. You know, Friday nights are great nights to work in the restaurant industry, not so much on Monday. And, you know, that's not fair to the workers. One thing I failed to mention earlier was the benefits to employers for paying a living wage. And we certainly have seen the impact of the pandemic with, you know, higher wages being offered, but still high turnover. An employer who pays a living wage is more likely to have less turnover. That saves on the bottom line. That saves on recruiting and training and forced overtime for the other employees who have to make it up. A happier employee means better work production. And for us as consumers, that means we have a better experience when we go into a business, and that means we're likely to return and continue to support that business. So I wanted to add that I have some handouts there in the lobby and a sign-up sheet if you want more information about Prosper Georgetown. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Other questions? Yes, one down front here, Jeff. Oh, just a moment. He's bringing you the mic. Thank you.
Tell us who you are.
Okay, my name is Lorraine Smith, and I'm a resident of Sun City. My question goes to the Georgetown Housing Initiative. I have been inquiring about the next-gen homes for the city of Georgetown, and they keep telling me you're not going to build any here. And I was wondering why that is, because a lot of young people are now moving back with their parents, or some of maybe a mother or father, the daughter or son wants them to live close to them, and the next-gen homes seem like the perfect buildings to build here in Georgetown for that, and yet I keep getting, no, they're never going to build any here.
I'm not really for sure why they wouldn't. I guess it really kind of comes down to the economics of it. You know, if they don't think that there's enough people and that unfortunately that they can make enough money off of that, then you know, for some reason they don't see the need for that. Well, if I've got this correct, is that, you know, we have a number of youngsters that are having to actually come back home for various different reasons, and so you build the house with that in mind. I used to have a client, actually, the client lives on DB Wood, and they actually have a house, and then right behind the house is a little bedroom kind of bungalow thing for their elderly father. You know, he wants to feel independent, but he's close enough to where they can actually kind of take care of him if something needs to be, or they can oversee that, rather than go across town or to the next county, etc. But I think it's a matter of economics.
Well, I'm thinking of the next-gen home being one building with an apartment inside of it. And that's the way they're building them in Leander. It's one structure, and there's a separate apartment, and then there's the master. So the person is close to their loved ones, and yet they have their own private bath and kitchen and living room, but they're under one roof. And that's what a next-gen home is to me. Not a separate bungalow, but all under one roof. And they have several models. I've been in several in Leander, and I've asked and asked, and I can't get a good answer.
And
That may be a good question for
economics.
some of the realtors too in the area.
Builders,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of a bottom line.
We have one question that has come in from Tondaloa. I think, help us saying her name correctly, Morgan. I have a question or two. Housing, she first asked. I wanted to find out what's happening in the city to identify low-income families, including seniors and veterans, that are being faced with increased rent mortgages that are forcing them out of their homes. Is there an increase in homelessness?
Well, I'm not going to purport to answer for Bob Weimer, who is extensive research and stuff on homelessness, and that's kind of all over the place. There's a study, and actually I just got a hot off the press study last week, and it gives, and actually this is put out by the Housing Works of Austin, and they're free, so if you'd like to get one, give me your email address and I can have you get a copy of it. But basically what they talk about is burdenness or people that are burdened in the county. And let me give you some of those figures, and maybe this will kind of help. The median family income in Williamson County now is $104,621. Back when we started kind of studying this and doing some things in 2019, that figure was $79,000. So to kind of give you an idea of what way things have gone. The median home price is $440,000, and a couple of other things. There's a poverty rate, which is 6.1%. Individuals in Williamson County living below the poverty rate is 34,242 people. And cost burdenness for the state of Texas, and this is a comparison, you've got 28% of the residents in this great state of Texas that are cost burdened, 13% of which are extremely cost burdened. In Williamson County, that figure is 26% of the people, one out of four, are cost burdened, and 10% are extremely cost burdened. So there's the Board of Realtors put out some information. Austin Housing Works, the state of Texas put out a lot of things on housing. So the information is out there. People know what they're actually kind of dealing with. The real turn cycle in all of this is what we're going to do about it.
So if I could...
One quick thing.
Sure.
Just to add to it. So one of the things that's not in those statistics, and I live in a working class neighborhood. If you go around the neighborhood, you will see a lot of cars parked in front of houses, and what the reason for that is that people are in doubled up, tripled up situations. So 2 or 3 families living in the same house because the kids can't afford to get out, and even working full-time jobs. They're stuck in the houses, or you have your relatives coming in and live with you, and that's not part of the homeless statistics. So I just wanted to add that.
May I add something? What happens is that people are forced to move outside of the city, and I live out between Weir and Wahlberg, and there is a proliferation of manufactured home communities being built, as well as RV parks. RV parks are no longer places where people go and stay for a little while. They're people living year-round. And what that means is there's extra money that they have to spend to drive to and from work, which adds to their costs. Kids who live way out there don't have the opportunity to participate in school activities. And for those of you who have done that, you know how much that enriches your life. And so I think what we need is pressure on our elected officials to change policies and to encourage those kind of developments. The city seems to be quite willing to give away tax incentives and abatements to big companies coming in, they don't seem to be as interested in investing in the infrastructure to keep people here.
Catherine, could I just say a word? In Austin, I'm aware that RV parks have tripled their rates for monthly, so that they're charging like over $1,000 a month, just to stay in an RV park. So
Yeah, I was just going to comment that, housing is a complicated issue. Richard's group is really focused on workforce affordable housing, but we haven't really broached the subject of homelessness and those who cannot afford to live here in our city. That's a whole nother subject, and it would take an afternoon, I think, for us to delve into the complexities of that. And you've even suggested, some other elements of the housing industry that probably need to be considered. Yeah. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that, when you have that, when people talk about affordable housing, one of the things that's kind of been problematic for us in a sense is that when we talk about it, people think about homelessness or maybe public housing, which is nothing wrong. Those are situations that people find themselves in. So I'm not. Please don't think I'm trying to be disparaging of those populations. But workforce housing is basically people that are working every day. They may be making somewhat substantial incomes. Actually, I was talking to my wife today, and when I started teaching school in San Antonio, I was making $6,600 a year, and that was the second highest pay in the city. So it's still hard for me to get around the fact that people make 50 grand and they're having a hard time making ends meet. But I'm getting around it and I understand that. But even on workforce housing, first year teachers, maybe even some firefighters. I'm not sure what the chief is paying new recruits for police officers. But those guys may be eligible for workforce housing. If you're talking about retention of teachers, Austin understands, and that's why they're trying to do a bond issue to retain teachers so that they can get housing. And housing for teachers is not a new thing. If you've been out to West Texas in the last 50 years, they provided housing out there for teachers for a long time. So it's not a new thing, but this housing thing has a lot of different components to it, and unfortunately, one size really doesn't fit all.
Ron, I have one more question that comes from Renee Crabtree on live stream, and I'm just going to ask this to you because I think you can probably field this. Are there city and/or county boards that directly address Georgetown homelessness? I'm only aware of nonprofits. Is it simply addressed through nonprofits?
That is currently the case. I think at one time the city had a task force on homelessness, but it is no longer in existence as I understand it. The nonprofit sector is primarily engaged in those activities, although the chief, I'm sure, has some encounters with situations, and you may want to talk about that as well.
The city group still meets quarterly to discuss current trends and issues. Yeah, there still is a city group that meets quarterly to discuss the issues regarding people without housing, and I believe, as a matter of fact, it might be a meeting Monday. But, the big thing, like I keep saying all the time is, and we've discussed this, is homelessness is such a complex issue, and I fully recognize, nor would I ever want this to be, it is not ever going to be fundamentally a police issue, right? It is a community-wide issue that's going to require community-wide solutions. I am not naive to the fact that we are never going to enforce our way out of homelessness, nor would I want to. There's certain behaviors that I would never want to see criminalized. It's not the way to address the problem. But yeah, a lot of the work is being done through the nonprofits, some of it, and some just working groups that aren't even technically nonprofits, like the Georgetown, Texas Homeless Initiative. We have seen an increase in the amount of camps. We have, we do a lot of work to clean up the camps. I'm going to be really frank with you. It's really, really expensive to clean up some of these camps. There's a significant amount of debris. A lot of times they're unoccupied, so it is definitely a complex problem.
Well, Jeff, panelists, one more question, one last question. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. And as we're fielding this next question, yes.
Hi, I'm Kara Skinner. I go to church here at Wellspring. I work with Helping Hands. Excuse me. And I was wondering why Georgetown doesn't have a homeless shelter. I mean, we go to the library and give out sandwiches, and there's people that I had a guy come and ask me. He was from out of town. He said, "Do y'all have a homeless shelter? I just need one night, and I'm looking for a job, and I have a place, And so I gave him money to go to Austin because he was out of gas. And isn't there any way we can get a homeless shelter in Georgetown?
Well, let me say this. If you really want to do that, get a group of folks who are like-minded together and start working on that particular issue. What I think we've learned over the last 8 or 9 years is that this is hard work. It's hard work, but it can be done. What we're seeking to create here in terms of beloved community is a place where we don't have inequity, where we don't have homelessness, where we don't have children who are illiterate, but a place where all live an abundant life. And if we can do that, I believe that is helping us as beloved children of God co-create with God the kingdom of heaven on earth. My devotion this week, and I'll close, Jeff, with this because we're going to talk about next steps. My devotional this week from the Upper Room Discipline. In one session said, we cannot do everything, but we can do something. And if we partner with God, we can do more together than we can do alone. So my challenge to you is here are some issues that we're currently facing in our community that we're working on, trying to create the best place for everybody to live. Chief Cheetah didn't talk about the community initiative in the police department, where groups of stakeholders have been assembled to address and tackle some of these issues. This is ongoing. This has started 7 or 8 years ago. George and Barbara Brightwell were co-founders of Courageous Conversations. I believe George penned, if not penned, the vision statement. We have much work to do. Today's objective was to give you a glimpse and to invite you, if you're not already involved, to get involved, to become more aware of the issues and find your place in helping to resolve those. On the back of your program is a tear-off sheet for your name, your contact information, and check off one of the boxes, if not all of them, and we will follow up with you. We're going to hear more about Fiesta in the coming months, so you'll have an opportunity to participate in that. Again, thank you so much for your presence here today, and I believe Jeff is in your hands.
We're going to close our time as we move through just this this time of worship and prayer. And so you've heard so much information. We've done this as a panel discussion. We also want to, though, to remind ourselves that this is a spiritual endeavor. This is a spiritual exercise for us. It's not something that is devoid of our relationship with God. And so as people of God, I invite you to stand and we join together in this affirmation of faith for racial justice. And we say this together. Christ is calling us. Christ is calling us to be a community that offers radical hospitality to everyone, an inclusive family rather than an exclusive club that recognizes and honors the image of God in every human being, where we exhibit personal authenticity, true respect, and validation of others, recognizing and affirming rather than eradicating our differences, where we listen emotionally, tolerate ambiguity, and build trust without fear of difference, where we acknowledge our limitations and our conflict, yet speaking truth in love, seek pathways of nonviolence, where we release resentment and bitterness and focus our energy on fighting unjust systems, not people we label as evil, where we commit to justice and achieve friendship and understanding through negotiation, compromise, and consensus. Christ is calling us to oppose and take direct action against poverty, hunger, and homelessness, where we advocate neighborhood revitalization without displacement, blending faith and action in our commitment to defeating injustice, even injustice within our faith communities, where we encourage and embrace artistic expressions of faith from diverse perspectives, fostering dynamic and active spirituality, where we gather together for table fellowship, relying on scripture reading, prayer, and corporate worship for inner strength, where we promote human rights and work to create a non-racist society, sharing our power with the knowledge of the inescapable network of mutuality among the human family. Christ is calling us. I invite you to remain standing for the scripture reading.
Just as Pastor Ron opened us with this important scripture, I ask you to ponder on it and read it again with me. It comes from 2 Chronicles. It's chapter 7, verse 14. I learned this when I was a teenager. It's been on my refrigerator on and off. It can be a beacon for us as it was to our forefathers and foremothers. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Miss Paula.
You may be seated.
We said this would be a panel discussion and prayer. Here's the prayer. When we think about all that the Lord has done for us, my soul cries out with gratitude. And so I say now, Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus, we lift this prayer to you. Lord, I ask you to give empathy and understanding to those seeking education on racism, to become agents of righteous change. Grant your church humility to have honest conversations about race. We know some of the most racist and vile things have come through the church, and now it is our job to do what God would have us to do and put those things right. Building bridges with those of different ethnic backgrounds toward a unified message of justice pointing to the gospel. Enable all forms of government, community, and sectors of our society to engage in loving discourse that honors all people and bringing social justice. May conversations lead to spirit-led actions that transform communities and shift our national discord. Lord, I pray for justice and righteousness on earth that reflects the original design of heaven. May the inherent dignity and value of every person be recognized as they are empowered to maximize their God-given potential through righteous systems of order and justice. I pray against the strongholds of darkness that build corrupt systems of injustice. May any dark, spiritual, and ideological system be dismantled as we rebuild new ways of thinking, being, and doing to honor and serve all people equally. Grant wisdom to those building social justice reforms in alignment with biblical truths. In recognizing the sinful nature of every person, we pray for the establishment of justice systematically rooted in the knowledge of Christ's saving grace, leading to societal transformation from the individual to the collective whole by the power of the Lord. The Lord is your mighty defender, perfect and just in all his ways. Your God is faithful and true. He does what is right and fair, as it is stated in Deuteronomy 32:4. So, Lord, I commit my failures as well as my successes into your hands. Give me courage, strength, and generosity to let go and move on, leaving the past behind me and living the present to the full. Lead us always to be positive as we entrust the past to your mercy, the present to your love, and the future to your providence, as it was spoken by St. Augustine. So we come this afternoon as empty pitchers to your full fountain. Awaken in us your spirit to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly on the path you set before each of us. Help us to always see your image in our fellow humans. Remind us that every good and perfect gift comes from you. We are both stewards of the gifts from you that are well-developed minds for use for the betterment of all. May our physical strength be used to uplift the downtrodden, the homeless, the economically challenged. May the mind that is in you, Lord Jesus, be also in us, directing us to use our resources, our wealth, as you intended, and not for selfish indulgence. These are hard challenges for mankind, because so many times we are encouraged to do otherwise. You call us to sacrifice and be obedient as evidence of our faith and your great abundance in your storehouse, which is never empty, and you freely give to those who are obedient. Allow us to build and live in Georgetown, the beloved community that is the shining light on the hill that would spark this nation to be a more perfect union, accepting all you, Lord, send to bless us. Let our leaders in education, government, business, healthcare, civic endeavors hear and trust you as they participate in building our inclusive, beloved community. Emphasis on unity. U-N-I-T-Y. You can't spell community without unity. Bless and multiply this in your name, Jesus, that we might be your righteous remnant and serve you in the manner in which you created us for. Amen. Now, if you will stand, we are going to sing and follow on the screen, Lift Every Voice. The cadence on it, if you're not used to singing it, can trick you because it starts pretty upbeat and then it slows down. And you'll find yourself singing without the benefit of music. And then we'll know just how well you can carry a tune. So, Andy.
want to say a very special word of thanks to all the panelists who were here. Would you thank them again? And to the Micah workers from First United Methodist Church, thank you. And to all those at Wellspring who led an incredible effort through this summer that we might keep this, the task of anti-racism always in front of us. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge that there are more Wesleyans in the room than United Methodist, and that Brother William Quickly over here, Dr. Quickly, thank you for your presence with us. It is I saw you there, and it's a joy that we stand together as people of faith. And so, friends, when you leave here, we're not such a dense crowd that it's really hard to get out here. But because we're in the county, Georgetown PD doesn't help us get out of the parking lot. So what we encourage you to do, the best way out of our parking lot is to drive toward the building if you're over here and get into the line going out this way. And then please make your way carefully onto Williams Drive because the speed limit is 55 and people go average of maybe 70. I don't know, it's something. So they go at a higher rate out here. But and also please, the way to connect with us, and the same is true for those who are online. If there's something that interested you, please feel free to reach out through our Facebook page. But those who have the back of your bulletin, tear that off or drop the whole thing into the plate, but put your name and where it is that you are interested in connecting, because this is what this is about. It's not finally about all the talk we do in here, it's about all the work we do out there. So go be the church. Blessings. Go in peace.
Amen.
Thank you. Corey, man, thank you so much.
You have that, what you read from your blogger? Can I have it? I loved it.
I thought I saw you over there. Oh, hey, I wouldn't have missed this. Come on now. Pardon me. Good to see you. It is good work. It is good work.